Back from Gotham, Diana thinks she has a moment to breathe, but not if Zatanna has anything to say about it. In the beginning, there was love. Cersei sits on the beach of the Wild Isle with baby Diana. Suddenly, a beautiful woman steps from the waters of hell. The woman motions for Cersei to say nothing as she reaches for Diana. "Hello, my little gumdrop," Aphrodite says with a smile as she lifts the baby into the air. Baby Diana looks into the beautiful woman's face. But suddenly, Diana is awakening in the Hieron. She looks around the forest and Pegasus snorts at her. "Aphrodite? Something is coming," Diana whispers. Quickly, she stands and heads back out into the Hieron proper, where she finds Ferdinand and Petra waiting for her. They are all that remains of the maze's refugees. "It's quiet now, with the last of our maze refugees settled," Diana notes to her friends. But the great Minotaur shakes his head. "Well, not the last. There's still us," he rumbles softly. But Diana smiles at them both. "Ferdinand, I have told you and Petra time and again, this is your home for as long as you want it to be," she says before turning away. "Will you be watching the Senate hearing?" Ferdinand asks. "No need," Diana calls over her shoulder. Ferdinand and Petra look at each other before heading for the kitchen. "Maybe we should make Steve something to eat," Ferdinand asks Petra. "What would one want to eat if they had to go to a terrible Senate hearing before lunch?" he ponders. In Washington, D.C., Steve Trevor sits before a Senate hearing meeting, answering questions on his actions during the Gateway City incident. The senator in charge points out that one cannot serve two masters, and it seems that Colonel Trevor had a conflict of interest that day, as he, being an officer of the U.S. military, began to take commands from a foreign immigrant on the field of battle. "I did what I always try to do, sir. Serve and protect the American people. There was only one person on the beach who understood what was going on, and I did my best to help her solve the problem," Steve tells them. He leans in closer to the mic to make sure everyone hears him. "Despite the insanity of that day, we didn't lose a single civilian or soldier. Without Wonder Woman, I think it's a very different story," he continues. The senator leans back in his chair and stares hard at the colonel. "Let's go back to that day in question, shall we? You disobeyed direct orders from your superior officer," the senator starts to say. But Steve leans in once more. "No, sir. I might have, had he given me any, but he did not. In his wisdom, I believe he determined that Diana had a better handle on things than we did. I'll remind you that she had just defeated a building-sized monster and all its minions. There was excellent evidence that she was exactly the solution we were desperate for," Steve explains. "Following the Gateway City event, I proposed myself as a liaison between Diana and the U.S. military," Steve starts to say, but explains that the government wanted to use Diana as a weapon. So, Steve recused himself from the position and resigned his commission. Finally, Steve stands at his desk and glares at the members of the Senate who sit before him. Lights flash behind him as reporters take pictures. No man can truthfully serve two masters, and if the US government wishes to oppose Wonder Woman, then they are on the wrong side of history. And I'll be on the correct side of it, where Diana will also always be," Steve says, explaining that he has always tried to ally himself with justice, which is what he is doing now. Finally, he turns and walks out of the room, bringing gasps of shock from all those gathered. "If you want to speak to me again, Senator, you'll need a subpoena," Steve calls over his shoulder. Meanwhile, in Area 41, the scientists have finally finished their work. "The parasite?" Kale asks as she stares down at the fishwoman on the table. "Functioning normally. She'll be ready," Dr. Alberts tells her. He glances up at the director. "You understand you won't have control of them, right? I only ask because if you're deploying them in areas with civilians. Without control, he starts to point out. But Kale cuts him off. I'm well aware of the risks, Alberts. The parasite is not about mind control. It's a cudgel to beat them to death if they deviate too far from our goal. The parasite will degrade quickly if they don't return. A death sentence. Fear is the control, she explains. Director Kale turns and stalks from the room. Make sure they're all ready to go by ribbon cutting time, she orders. Later that night, crowds gather outside Gateway City Natural History Museum. They marvel as Diana swoops down astride Pegasus and lands on the red carpet. Cameras flash as the Amazon dismounts, and everyone admires her black dress. Someone rushes from the crowd, and Diana smiles as Barbara reaches for her hand. Barbara, you look divine, Diana says. Barbara begins to pull her aside. Thank you, Diana. There are so many people dying to meet you. Come with me, Barbara says. They head up the stairs for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, opening the new mythology wing of the museum. The crowds head inside, and Diana marvels at the antiquities that Barbara has gathered. This is very impressive, she muses. Barbara nods, explaining that she's been gathering it for years, but she could never convince the museum board that anyone would be interested in it. Until now. And boy, has that perspective changed since you arrived, Barbara tells her. Diana stops and looks up at a great statue of an Amazon warrior. Thank you for this, Barbara, she whispers. The two continue to move around the exhibits, but suddenly, Diana becomes dizzy. She stumbles and her glass of champagne tumbles from her hand. Diana! Barbara shouts as she rushes to her friend's side. Memories flash before Diana's eyes. She is a young adult, standing on the shores of the Wild Isle and facing Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. Both raise their magical staff, preparing for a fight. The goddess rushes forward and attacks, but Diana backflips away from the blow and smiles. Fast enough for you that time? She asks. The two rush at each other and their staves clash. Why does she never come to see me anymore? Diana questions as they back away from each other. The two rush and strike blows once more. You think I know why she does what she does? Artemis asks. Diana twists away, pointing out that the goddess is avoiding the question. Will you answer my question if I beat you? She asks. Artemis smiles and agrees to the terms, but she drops her weapon. Diana stares in shock as the goddess begins to transform, and suddenly a chimera stands before her. Shit, Diana whispers. Language, princess! Artemis hisses through her feline mouth. She rushes at the Amazon and knocks her aside with one blow. The goddess presses her attack, using her snakehead tail to bite into Diana's shoulder. But Diana does not struggle. Instead, she grabs hold of the snake and pulls the goddess in close. Artemis is unable to flee as Diana begins to hammer her with blows, hitting her again and again until the goddess falls to the ground, bloodied and defeated. Finally, Diana stops her assault and stands over Artemis, breathing heavily. The day is mine. I want my answer, Diana insists. Artemis shifts back to her regular form in moments and sits up. Why doesn't she come to me? Diana asks. The two lay on the beach and tend to their wounds. Perhaps she does not come because you have nothing more to learn from her. Why does this bother you? Artemis asks. Diana shrugs and falls on her back, staring up at the strange sky of hell. I feel unprepared, and I just miss her. None of you ever tell me anything real, Diana says softly. But Artemis merely shakes her head. That's not true. Well, it's not entirely true, she whispers. Diana opens her eyes to find Barbara kneeling over her. Quickly, the Amazon sits up. How long was I out? Diana questions. You barely hit the floor. You just sort of crumpled. Are you all right? Barbara asks as Diana stands. She looks around the room at the crowd that has gathered, concern on their faces for their hero. But something is wrong. Diana can feel it. She can't access her magic. Steve walks over, asking if she wants water or to get some air. But Diana's eyes have turned to steel. She can sense something coming. Steve, get Barbara out of here. Etta and Gia too, if you can find them, Diana whispers. There's an explosion nearby, and magical energy rips apart one of the displays. The crowd screams in fear and surges towards the exit, but Diana stalks forward. The smoke clears, and Diana sees her opponents. Hey, cutie. Good to see you on this plane of existence, the witch tells her. She motions to the others that have gathered at her back. I'm Zatanna, and this is the Suicide Squad. You ready to do this? Zatanna asks. Diana's eyes widen in shock. She remembers the spell the witch cast that night that bound Diana's magic to her, allowing her to control it. Zatanna smiles as she and the squad move forward. I think you figured it out, didn't you, cutie? She's underestimated you, but I haven't. I wonder, what should we do with your magic first? And that was the complete story for Absolute Wonder Woman, issue 16 by Kelly Thompson. Zatanna and the Suicide Squad are here, and Zatanna has control of Diana's magic. Nothing good can come from this. But let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below, and let me know what you think of this Zatanna design. And if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe to help out the channel. I'm Dan with Comicstorian, and we will see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.